this is Editor's Take. I'm Sakshi Batra and I have with me Gaurav Chaudhary, Deputy Executive Editor of Money Control, and we are going to be talking about the macro data today. Thanks very much, Gaurav, for joining in this discussion. Now, both on the retail inflation front or the wholesale inflation front, there has been slight bit of disappointment because both have shown a rise month on month. Also, we've got the IIP data or the industrial production output, which signals a fall in the current data that has come out. How do you really, read this whole data? And let's quickly just first tell the viewers what the data has come out. The wholesale inflation data has risen to 5.13% in September as compared to 4.5% in August. That's a month-on-month increase. Retail inflation has risen to about 3.77% from 3.69% in August. That's again a month-on-month increase. And IIP has fallen to 4.3% in August from 6.5% in July. That's a sharp fall over here. So Gaurav, how do you really read this when you talk about the economy on both these fronts?
First, on the wholesale inflation, the data which has come out today, 5.1%, it's largely driven by a growth in primary articles. And if you look at the disaggregated data, probably I expect a bit of change in the coming months. Okay. One, the fuel inflation, yes, which has come down because there was an excise duty and a VAT cut. Okay. So, and also to some extent the ₹5 cut in petrol and diesel prices in the month of September, yes, has played out now. Okay. And is also going to play out in the coming months. But the problem is of a falling rupee. Now, every time the rupee falls, the landed price of crude oil prices go up, and that translates into higher petrol and diesel prices. So that is something that the government will probably be wary of and will need to keep an eye on. The other thing is the difference between retail inflation, which is the CPI index, and the wholesale inflation, which is the WPI index. There is a bit of divergence, and the divergence is primarily because of the different weights. Okay. Food has a higher weight in retail inflation, right, as compared to wholesale inflation, and wholesale inflation has a larger representation of globally traded commodities like crude oil, etc., okay, or metals and minerals, and that is showing up in higher wholesale inflation compared to retail inflation. Okay. So far as index of industrial production or factory output is concerned, the September output has fallen, the August output has fallen primarily because of a base effect. If you go back by 1 year, in the month of June and July, yes, there was a lot of destocking that had happened, yes, ahead of GST's launch and also during the first month of GST's launch. Okay. That would have played out. And that is why the August industrial production data has shown a sharp decline. Right. I expect that to remain around in that range over the next coming 2-3 months. So, let's see how inflation plays out once the minimum support prices, the higher MSP, right, kicks in and the new harvest starts arriving in the markets.
Right. So a lot of factors will have to be taken into consideration going forward as well. How do you read this in context with the RBI's projection of inflation? Because in the latest policy, they have reduced the inflation projection for the second half of current year. Do you think they have correctly factored in all the macros and all the risks, or will they have to revise this now with this data coming now?
There are two sets of data that the RBI probably will look in if they have to go in for a revision sometime in the next policy in December. Okay. Okay. One of them is how MSP plays out. Yes. A higher MSP, as we know, on 14 cereals was raised by 1.5 times, and the higher minimum support prices will kick in sometime in October when the harvest starts arriving in markets. We are not quite sure how it's going to play out in the overall food inflation. It's going to push up food inflation, that is for sure. Okay. The other is on how oil prices are going to behave, because once the Iran sanctions kick in from November, what are the landed prices of crude oil prices be for a country like India? And if that shoots up significantly, that is one unknown that the RBI will factor in when it presents the policy in December. I don't rule out an upward revision of inflation rates or projections of inflation rates, okay, by the RBI in its next policy.
All right. So the inflation rates which the RBI will project will also probably see an uptick after this all macro data has come out, and also the risks that are just impending on the MSP front and also on the crude oil prices front. Do you really expect the RBI now to go ahead and raise interest rates also in the December policy after this data?
We need to keep in mind what the RBI said and the phraseology of what it said in the last policy, which, yes, was in the early part of this month, where they changed their stance to calibrated tightening. Correct. And that clearly means that it has kept the door open for a future rate hike. Depending on how the rupee behaves and how crude oil prices behave, I don't rule out a rate hike by the RBI in the December policy.
Right. Thanks very much then, Gaurav, for sharing all this information with us and all that insight on both the inflation and also on the IIP data as well. Thanks very much for joining us in this editor's take. Do stay logged on to moneycontrol.com for more news and updates. Thanks for watching.